Dr. Hammer's discoveries show that nothing in nature is diseased. Everything is biologically meaningful. Nature doesn't make mistakes. All medical theories, whether conventional or alternative, are based on the concept that dis-ease is a malfunction of the organism. Every dis-ease is caused by an unexpected emotional, biological conflict. As soon as the conflict happens, the person is affected on a psyche, brain, and organ level simultaneously. So the conflict takes place, we perceive it, our psyche perceives it in a certain way, which then affects our brain. Instantly, a message is sent to our brain regarding what is going on and how to react, and the brain simultaneously sends a signal to that specific organ, area, or tissue of the body, instructing it to adapt, to alter itself in a way that is meant to aid in our survival, to help us get through that situation. Diseases are not meant to harm or kill the individual. They are actually just an adaptation caused by an emotional, traumatic event in our lives, and the purpose of this adaptation is to aid in our survival. The dis-ease, or the symptoms that we see and experience, are meant to help facilitate the resolution of the conflict. And this is why in German New Medicine, or GNM, we don't use the word dis-ease. Instead, we refer to it as a special biological program, because essentially that's what it is. These programs are encoded in our DNA biologically, passed down from generation in generation since early years of evolution, and they get turned on when they are needed, when something happens, and now we need to use this program of adaptation in order to get through the situation. These adaptations take place to help us find a resolution to the conflict. And this could look like cell loss or cell proliferation. And then when a resolution is met and the repair or healing stage begins, if there was cell loss, the cell is now replenished, basically returning back to the normal or homeostasis state that it was before it had to bring in this adaptation in order to help you. Or if the adaptation was cell proliferation, now the cells will be released, there will be cell loss, so that the tissue or the organ goes back to normal. This video is just an introduction to German New Medicine, also known as German Healing Knowledge, or GNM. I will be making more videos going more in depth and breaking down all of this for you. Then please do subscribe to my channel. I would appreciate your support, as it does help me continue to share this information. And in this video, I'm going to share with you how Dr. Hammer discovered this new paradigm of health, what he went through that led him to discover this, and then be able to test it and prove it with hard scientific evidence that has been suppressed and hidden from us. And there's many people who don't want us to find this information, even though he has all of the evidence, which is probably why you haven't heard of this before. But it's time now, as you can see, it's time now for this to come out and for people to know this life-saving information. And as the discovery of this and learning about it and applying it to my life has helped me immensely after I received a breast cancer diagnosis, not only has it helped me to be able to discover what the root cause was, and also it has been a crucial part of my own self-healing, but also just knowing this information and beginning to apply it and see how it unfolds throughout your life really eliminates all fear. And that in and of itself is priceless, especially in a world where society, all the programming and conditioning, and unfortunately, in a large part, in many cases, the medical healthcare industry just floods us with all these thoughts of fear and helplessness when it comes to, symptoms and diseases appearing in the body. German New Medicine for me has just been a savior and has helped me to completely shift my view on all this, and to be able to just be confident in knowing that I can heal and I will heal, and there's nothing to fear, and things are not going to get worse, and they're not going to spread and just go rampage, as long as I understand this process and know that that's not how things work. But if I allow myself to be taken away with all of those stories, then I can create that reality for myself as well. So it's helped me to create a different reality that I want for myself. and has led me on this journey of self-healing, of self-discovery, of personal transformation, which I am blessed and honored and so grateful to be here with you today to share with you as well. So how Dr. Hammer actually discovered this is very interesting. It's also a very good example of how this could play out. So let's look at his story. So basically, Dr. Hammer was a German doctor. Actually, his wife was a doctor as well. And they were, healthy people. They didn't really have any health problems. They're just living their lives until their son, at the age of 17, I believe it was, around that age, accidentally got shot. And Dr. Hammer then spent the next 2 months taking his son through a series of surgeries and things, attempting to save his life, but the attempts were not successful, and his son ended up passing away in his arms. Now, shortly after this, he was diagnosed with testicular cancer. And he thought this was very strange because he had been healthy his whole life. And, what are the chances? What are the odds that just after his son passes away, now he receives this diagnosis? And what was especially interesting about this diagnosis was that it was related to the reproductive system. And what was the conflict shock that he had experienced? A loss of his son. So basically, he began to question this. And as at the time he didn't have any of this information, he did get surgery, and then he began to look into this further. He was working with cancer patients at the time, so he began to interview his patients, to ask them what they had gone through in their lives, to see if they had gone through a similar situation as him, if there had been any sort of traumatic, unexpected conflict shock before the symptoms began to appear. And he found that in every single case, this was true. Every single patient had suffered some sort of emotional, unexpected conflict, shock, shortly before their symptoms appeared, followed by their diagnosis. So what he proceeded to do next was look further into this and gather scientific evidence. He began to read his patients' CT scans to look at the brain, what was happening in the brain. Was there any sort of evidence there that showed how the brain was adapting and changing to this shock? And he found that yes, this was in fact the case. So in the CT scans of his cancer patients, he was able to see somewhat of a ring shape in a specific area of the brain. All of his patients had this, and they had it in an area of the brain that corresponded with that organ or that area of the body that was affected. So for example, somebody with testicular cancer like he had was located in the area of the brain that corresponds with that organ of the body. Whereas somebody else who had the symptom in, let's say, their stomach, or maybe their breast or their throat, wherever it was, the ring showed up in that area of the brain that corresponded with that organ or that tissue, that area of the brain. And all of this also corresponded with the event that took place. Like how for Dr. Hammer, it was in relation to his offspring, to, reproduction, as he had reproduced and his son was then born. And then now that he had lost his son, this same area that was related to his son, to his offspring, was affected. And that's where the symptoms appeared. And so as he began to follow the stories of many of his patients and gather all this scientific evidence, he created basically what is now German New Medicine, which is this whole scope of what conventional medicine refers to as dis-ease. And it really just maps out this relationship between the different area of your brain and which organ or tissue of your body is affected, and what sort of conflict shock would be related to that symptom, or as I mentioned before, to this special biological program. So basically, in the case of Dr. Hammer, what happened? He lost his son, and that was a conflict shock for him. It was unexpected, it was isolating, and it was an acute experience. His body began to increase the amount of tissue in the reproductive area of his body, which he later discovered actually increased his ability to reproduce again, to have another child. This actually increased his testosterone, changed the state so that it would be easier to have another child, to replace the child that he had lost. This is nature's biological solution for a loss of a child. It may not be the only solution. So if this has happened to you, don't worry if you're not having more children. Dr. Hammer did not have any more children. But basically, this is what's happening. It's not that the cells in his body went rampage and crazy and malignant and they're against him now, or he did something wrong because he was exposed to certain frequencies or eating the wrong foods. No, actually, his body was doing this just to adapt to the situation in order to help him, to aid him in his survival. Because imagine going through something like that. If he was not able to overcome that, then that could have been his demise. And so his body responded by increasing his ability to have another child in order to replace that feeling, giving him something new to focus on, let's say, and that would be then the resolution to this conflict and resolve the situation. And then the adaptation, those extra cells that were added, that extra tissue that was added in order to increase his ability to reproduce. At that point of reaching the resolution to this conflict, there would now be cell loss. So the extra cells, the extra tissue that was added on would now be released. The purpose has been accomplished. So Dr. Hammer, over the years, as he was working with his patients, he started with cancer patients, but then he began to study this and look into this for all different types of diseases. He saw time and time again how the same themes kept coming up for the same areas of the body. The reproductive area in women and men was often related to a loss of a child or of someone or something that felt like a child. It could even be a job or a business if that was like your baby. He noticed that his patients that went through some sort of death fright conflict where they feared for their lives, their lungs were affected. The tissue in their lungs began to adapt in order to help them survive that situation. Because what is the most important thing that we need to survive? It is to breathe. So that is the area of the body that was affected in those types of conflicts. When it comes to nurturing, to not being nurtured, the lack of being nurtured, or not being able to nurture, that can affect the breast area, because the breasts are there for what? To nurture back to health, or to nurture into growth and to take care of. So those types of conflicts affected the breast area. And so basically throughout the years and with his studies and the evidence that he found in CT scans, this is how Dr. Hammer basically filled in all the information and created this amazing map to health, which is now referred to as German New Medicine or German Healing Knowledge. Now, I'm going to break this down for you and go much further in depth into all of this, provide different examples and things in the next few videos. So stay tuned and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. So I have basically been testing this on myself or using this knowledge on myself for different things that I've been going through in the last couple of years. But the main thing, which is the main reason why I even discovered this information that brought me to German New Medicine, was a breast cancer diagnosis that I received about 2 years ago. And once I found German New Medicine and realized that the German New Medicine has separated the type of conflicts into two main conflicts. So the first is a nest worry conflict, where you may be worrying about your child's well-being or health, or about your nest, about your home situation or your family. And the other is a separation conflict, where it's a feeling of a loved one has been ripped from your breast. And this is referred to as a separation conflict. And this can be literal, where literally your child is ripped from your breast, or it may not be literal and it may feel that way. Now, the interesting thing with this is that if it's a nest worry conflict, the symptoms begins to appear in the what we call the conflict active phase, which I will get into more in another video as well. But basically, Dr. Hammer also discovered that every special biological program, or what conventional medicine refers to as dis-ease, has two phases. The conflict active phase, which is basically the phase where the conflict that begins and activates this program, this adaptation in your body in order to help protect you and help you survive, where this is activated and it's running. Then you have a resolution. This resolution then sort of completes and resolves the conflict, and then after that, the healing and repair process begins. So some of these special biological programs, as we refer to them in German New Medicine, sometimes the symptoms do appear in the conflict active phase when we're going through that tough time. But a lot of the times, more so than not, the symptoms actually occur in the repair phase, in the healing phase. So you've already found the resolution and now you're healing. But then you see the symptom and then you experience the symptom. And oftentimes what happens is, because we don't know this information, we get alarmed, we freak out, the fear sets in, then we start researching online, which is never really a good idea, or you go to the doctor or speak with friends and you start to just imagine all these things that it could be. And you create more fear, which is potentially creating more conflict shocks. So looking into this information on GNM, I learned that there are these two different conflicts related to the breast, right? The nest worry conflict and the separation conflict. And I knew immediately that in my case, it would have been a separation conflict. I hadn't really experienced anything related to a nest worry conflict. One thing that is important with German New Medicine for a lot of the special biological programs, not all of them, but for a lot of them, it is related to the handedness. If you're left-handed or right-handed is very important because, for example, in my case, being biologically right-handed means that symptoms that are experienced in most cases on the right side of the body are related to a partner conflict, whereas symptoms experienced on the left side of the body are often related to a mother-child conflict. And so I had understood actually at the time that I was biologically left-handed. A year later, after discovering German New Medicine, I realized that I had made a mistake and I was actually not left-handed, but biologically right-handed. And so that changed everything. That made me realize that, wow, this is actually a partner conflict, a feeling of being separated from my partner, or a fear of being separated from my partner, or it could even be a desire to separate from your partner, but you feel like you can't. And it's important to note as well that it might not only be a partner, as in a romantic partner or a spouse, it could also just be someone in your life who you have kind of like a partner relationship with. So once I realized that it was a separation conflict related to my partner, I went back in my timeline of when the lump first appeared and had to, remember what happened around that time. And for this particular conflict, the symptom does appear in the healing phase. So what was going on before that, before the symptom appeared, before the healing began? What was going on, right? What had I gone through that was distressing, that was unexpected, that caught me off guard? Because that would be the conflict shock that activated this special biological program. I remembered something that had happened with my husband around that time that may have been interpreted by my psyche as a separation conflict. Because I had a fear of separation. I feared that we might separate, that our relationship maybe wasn't as strong as I thought it was. I was having these types of thoughts and fears, partially related to an event that happened right before that point. But really, now looking back at it, after all of the inner work that I've done and healing I've gone through, I realized that it was really just the straw that broke the camel's back. After all these other things, all these other similar feelings that I had about myself growing up, lack of self-worth, self-esteem, all these things, fear of not being good enough, fear of losing the people that I love, that were already there, that a certain event that had happened triggered all of these deep-rooted beliefs within me and caused my subconscious or my psyche to react in a way of, okay, maybe this means that we're not going to make it through, right? And there's going to be a separation. That's actually how I discovered the root cause of the breast cancer, which really in German New Medicine is just my body adapting to this fear of separation to aid with my survival. So then you might ask, well, why didn't it just continue to heal, right? The symptoms appear in the healing process. And at that point, yes, I had to a certain degree healed, to a certain degree I had resolved the conflict, but there was still a lot of tracks, as we call them in German New Medicine, or reminders in my subconscious. Things that when I heard them or saw them or maybe even smelled them reminded me of what had happened and basically began the cycle again. Again, going over all of the different possibilities of what could happen, really just obsessively thinking about the potential of us separating, and it's not something I wanted, yet I was going down this negative spiral over and over and over again. So this is what did not didn't allow my body to complete the healing as it was trying to do. I kept interfering with it, with these thoughts, with going back to that moment and replaying it in my mind. Some of this was conscious. A lot of this I was doing it though without even really realizing it. And it wasn't until I was able to start becoming aware of this so that when it would happen, I could quickly shift my attention, shift my focus, and let go of those thoughts and come back to a place of presence and of peace and just confidence and believing in myself and in our relationship and our marriage that things are fine and going to work out. But also doing a lot of inner work, a lot of shadow work, releasing and reframing these limiting beliefs that I had from childhood, and coming back to that and really working on myself, finding my own self-worth, my own self-love, basically just realizing that my own self-worth is not dependent on what my husband does or what my children do or how they behave or whether my friends like what I have to say or accept me or not, or any of those things. I realized at that point that I was basing my own self-worth on things that were outside of me, on how other people saw me or how other people thought of me or how other people behaved or didn't behave, right? Whether they met my own expectations or not. And if they didn't meet my expectations, I often thought that, oh, that's because they don't love me, right? They're not doing this because I'm not worthy enough. So I had to really look at that and address that and work on that and begin to fill my own cup, right? To fill that gap within me so that I was not constantly getting triggered about these things that made me go back into questioning my own worth, which was restarting this whole biological program and not allowing my breast to heal. So basically, that's a brief summary about how I used German New Medicine to discover the root cause. And then once I had that knowledge, I was able to begin to work on the areas of my life, of myself, really, that I needed to work on. Begin to change my perception, because that is resolution number 2. Right? Remember, number 1, a practical solution, like in the example of Dr. Hammer. He lost a child. If he has another child, that resolves the conflict. Now, in my case, what was I going to do? How was I going to practically resolve the conflict of feeling or being afraid of separating from my husband? Like, either something would maybe have to happen that he would have to do to convince me that this wasn't going to happen, but that means that basically my health, my well-being, and everything depends on things outside of me, right? On what other people are doing. So that wasn't going to work. That's just a recipe. That's not a recipe for success. And so I had to go with number 2, which the second option is a change of perception, changing the way you perceive that situation. So this is what I began to work on, and changing the way that I looked at things. Rather than basically depending on him for my happiness, changing that and looking within and really building that up from within, while at the same time putting my energy into our relationship still and working on it and showing up as the person I wanted to be, first of all, rather than expecting all these things from him, when, to be honest, I was not being the person I needed to be in the relationship, or the person I would want to be in a relationship with. So the moral of the story is, it's about how you perceive the things that happen in your life. It's about the psyche, your mind. All dis-ease starts in the psyche. This sends a signal to your brain, which then sends a signal to that specific corresponding area of your body to adapt in a certain way in order to help you through the situation, in order to aid in your survival because of an unexpected emotional shock that has been experienced. So while sometimes treating the symptom in a certain way can be helpful, sometimes we need to do something on a physical level to treat the symptom at the time, because it can be very painful or uncomfortable to a point where it's overwhelming and it's not allowing us to think clearly or to go through our everyday life. And we need that energy, we need that clarity in order to figure out what is the root cause and actually resolve the conflict once and for all from the root. But it's important to remember that the root always comes from within, from above, right? It comes from the psyche and how we think, how we perceive, what we believe about ourselves and the world around us. And that causes our body to respond in a specific way. And let me just say that knowing this information, not only does it bring so much clarity and allow you to heal yourself, but also it just takes away the fear. You understand that your body is not breaking down. It's not against you. It's not attacking you. It's not failing you. It's actually adapting in order to help you. It is so intelligent. And it's doing this all without your conscious awareness, without you even telling it that it needs to do this. It is saving you. It's looking out for you. It wants the best from you. So the art here is in understanding that, which takes away all of the fear and really allows you to calm down and to begin to work on the resolution rather than to just freak out and make rash decisions out of fear. So learning this, and very quickly after, things started to change and I really began to see physical results with my healing. And it hasn't been a linear process. It's been up and down, but I have continuously been moving forward and improving from there on out. So this is something I'm very passionate about now, German New Medicine, but also I've also used other things along the way to assist me with this, to help me get to the bottom of this, to help me begin to reframe those beliefs that were basically just running havoc on my mind and therefore my body and my whole life. And I will be sharing more about those with you in my next few videos. So please stay tuned. If you'd like to hear more about that, let me know what you thought about this in the comments. If you have any questions, please let me know. I know this is a kind of radical change and way of viewing medicine and health and things. And I'm doing my best to explain it clearly, but if any clarification is needed or you want to learn more about something, please do let me know.